Jason Rogers, great to see you, my friend.
Garth, here we go again. I'm excited about this episode. I think people are going to love it.
Yeah, you're really excited about this episode. People are going to love it. We've got two amazing guests, co-authors of a book. But before we jump in, Jason, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a set of rules that you have for your leadership? Set of rules that you have maybe for your team that you can just rely on all the time?
Yeah, I think I do. And they just live in principles that we share, and one of them is go slow, don't go fast. So there's hard on ideas, easy on each other. And the third one is there's always something we don't know. And we hold on to those. And like those are kind of mantras that will come up time to time. I mean, I think they're loosely held rules. I don't think we sit down and say thou shalt, but it's definitely in the operating system. It's in the background. It's in the subconscious of the way we operate as a leadership team. What about you, Garth? Have you established such a thing?
Yeah, I basically live by the rule of like no surprises when it comes to like who I directly report to and who reports to me. Just like don't surprise me, keep me informed along the way, and that's served me really, really well. And then to maybe not express the same way, but your three rules are brilliant, right? You can address ideas, right? You can critique ideas, but not the people. You have to separate those two things. Lead with kindness and compassion first, and because you understand that, you don't know what that person's dealing with, right? You've said this before. Hal Hannaford's 20% down, right?
You got it.
Today, listeners, we get another rule from our amazing guest. Rule number 6, and rule number 6 can solve almost every single problem there is.
Good one.
Take a listen.
Yeah.
Find out what rule number 6 is from our amazing guest today. We're looking at calm in the chaos. Hope you enjoy.
Enjoy the show.
Lassoing leadership, sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow.
Welcome back to Lassoing Leadership. This is Beard's Book Club. We're into season 3. And for those longtime listeners, you'll know already that we have an incredible bookshelf of authors that we've had on the show. And today is absolutely not an exception. I'm jacked about this conversation. So welcome back to the book club and this installment. I'm Jason Rogers. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Garth Nichols.
Hey, folks, I can always tell by the pace of Jason's voice how excited he is to get to our
I'm
guests.
ready.
So
let's go.
We have two amazing guests today. They are co-authors of the book Calm in the Chaos, which I highly recommend and have given out to some of my closest colleagues. So first, Danny Bauer is someone I've followed and learned from almost every day. Blog, newsletter, podcast, the list goes on, and there are just like amazing nuggets of gold in there. He's also no stranger to this podcast, so welcome back to Danny. He's also the chief ruckus maker at Better Leaders, Better Schools. He's a 2-time author. He's hosted one of the most popular education podcasts out there, and most recently, the author of this book. And storytelling, Danny. You've been storytelling on the Eastern Seaboard, so we're excited that you made some time for us today.
Thank you, Jason, Garth, and Glenn. Good to be with you again. So I appreciate you having me on the show.
All right.
And I can say I get tired just trying to keep up with your content, Danny. I don't know how you do it, man, but congratulations, and your thought leadership is really to be admired. And thanks for joining us on today's show.
Well, like the system doesn't do enough to grind down school leaders. So I figure if I put out an amazing amount of content, I can make them feel like they're not enough in keeping up. So. But in reality, I try to share stuff that's practical, right? That will make shifts in a leader's life. And also recently been launching some new experimental content that you can consume, let's say in 90 seconds, and have a mindset shift and that kind of thing. So
Danny, I was just gonna say this newsletter is not text heavy. It's like if TikTok made a newsletter, this is what it would be. It's so accessible, and you get to enough depth that okay, I want to click further, or no, I don't need that right now. I want to click this one. So anyway, let's introduce Glenn. Glenn.
Hey, Glenn.
Glenn Robbins is co-author of this book. Glenn is proud superintendent of Brigantine Public School District in Brigantine, New Jersey. He has served as public school superintendent in New Jersey since 2016. Prior to becoming the superintendent, he was a middle school principal. Congratulations on surviving that. A high school assistant principal as well. Congratulations on surviving that. And a high school social studies teacher and high school varsity coach. He is also a best-selling author of Calm the Chaos, Ancient Stoic Wisdom for Successful School Leadership, and a sought-after speaker. More to come, though. Glenn has also been awarded numerous administrative, international, national, and state recognitions, and there are just too many to list here, but I'm sure we can put them in the notes if we want to. We haven't met him in person yet, and he's new to the podcast, but we understand that he's a very snappy dresser. And if you just hit up a little Google search, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. Glenn, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate being here. Humbled and honored, and just excited to hang out with Danny for a little bit too and meet some new friends along the way. So thank you very much.
Yeah, earlier before we hit record, like I'm just along for the ride. but you've got some great accolades here. What sport did you coach at the varsity level?
Soccer.
Soccer. Okay, excellent. So you're a fan of Ted Lasso?
Yes, sir. That's
all right.
I was very excited when I saw the title of this. I actually one of my last talks out in Dallas, Texas, was leading like Ted Lasso in a Roy Kent world. So I think we're in good company today.
Oh, that's awesome. Here we go. It's meant to be. All right, let's kick it off with Danny. So, from our listeners who haven't heard from our podcast with Danny in the previous season, Danny's journey is quite unique from educator, classroom teacher, school leader into this podcaster, author, chief ruckus maker. That conversation we had in our previous season, Danny, you just spoke with so much passion and like purpose around your work. Can you tell us how you got here? Like, what does ruckus making mean to you?
Thanks, Garth. For me, the ruckus maker point of view is that you do school different, right? And so what does that mean? To me, it's making shifts from old, broken, or traditional ways of educating to new, different, and creative ways. And I don't judge the kind of shift you want to make. So maybe you go from traditional roles to working in learning centers. Or I spoke to a superintendent on the podcast, and he bought an abandoned amusement park, right, and turned it into a learning laboratory. So there's shifts all in between both of those, I think, examples I shared on the continuum. And what matters to me is that you're learning, you're growing, you're making these shifts. When I look at school leaders, there's two kinds, right? There's play it safe principals. They're kind of the bad guys, right? They manage their school. When they get better, it's incrementally better. And really everything they've learned in a manual. Turn to page 394, and this is how you administer. Ruckus makers, on the other hand, they're visitors from the future, showing us how education can one day be. And because they're reimagining education within a traditional system so that they create a campus experience worth showing up for, there's no manual for it, right? And what it requires is leadership and innovation. Mm-hmm. So that's the game that I like to play, right? The ruckus makers do school different. And that's what I'm out here, trying to share that point of view and find all the ruckus makers and support them.
There's something in there where you said make campus worth showing up for.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a real shift. And I love how you position that against just managing an administration. And I think particularly all leaders, but particularly school leaders, need to acknowledge how do you make your school worth showing up for? And independent schools, which is where Jason and I kind of play, this is the crux of our business model, that we want students to be excited. We want them to get the value out of that school. So I really love how you position that. So thank you.
Yeah, let me just add one quick thing. Like, students and staff and parents, right? Like everybody's excited about what's going on in campus. And I can connect it to Stoicism too, because a lot of times the Stoics would have you reflect on what's within your circle of influence, right? What can you control? And I think a problem with traditional education and play it safe principles, they take for granted that students and staff show up, right? Staff has a job. Just do the thing. You got a contract, you signed it, fulfill your duties. That's not, it's great that they have a job. They should work hard and all of that. But like, how are you making the experience one where they want to go above and beyond and not ask to be necessarily compensated, although that's fair. My point is, it's because it's in here. You've ignited the passion, right? And so don't just take it for granted that staff has the job and they should fulfill their duties, or that students need to show up, especially if it's a public setting, right? You're competing with Garth and Jason in independent schools, and there's charters. You have to give folks a real reason to show up. And so that's something I think about a lot. I cut you off, Jason. My bad.
No, cool, Dan. We're going to come back to that point, but I want to go all the way back to the start of your answer. I'm going to throw this to Glenn here. You talked about a shift of mindset early in that answer. And Glenn, I recognize that you've been through a lot of changes in your career. You've gone from teacher to AP to principal to superintendent. There's a lot of aspiring leaders who listen to this podcast and will often reach out to us and say, what has to change with our mindset as we move through stages of leadership? What kind of advice would you give to those folks who are moving through leadership when it comes to the changing mindset that is required or maybe not required? Super curious as to your thought as you've managed all of that, Glenn.
Yeah, so this goes in perfect to what Danny was just talking about. I think ultimately you have to remove your ego. And I know that's hard for some people once they start getting power positions, because then they feel like they are in full control and everything can be done right their way. And to Danny's point, you have to create areas that people want to come to. So you need feedback. You need to hear the good things, and you need to hear the things that we can improve on. And a lot of times that hits a nerve with some particular leaders in the field. And to Danny's point about the play it safe ones, I've always been, every year is a new opportunity, almost like a sports team, right? You have to redo. You have brand new kids coming in. You have brand new staff coming in, brand new families. Like, it's another opportunity to once again win the minds, souls, and hearts of these children that come to our door and create an experience that they'll never forget for the right reasons. But I think ultimately we have to remember that just because you got a degree 15, 20, 30 years ago, how long ago was that outdated?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is a great quote out there that your degree and certification are outdated within a year to 2 years. So I think it's always being, as our friends Danny and I have with Mike and Nick, they always talk about being unfinished. You're always learning. And I think if you're a true leader and you're going to be a true lifelong learner, you need to be learning new and different things each and every day. But for me, it goes to, is my staff happy? Do they want to come to school just like the kids when they walk through the door? I think it's pretty frightening. The Gallup just put out a poll, their survey that said 21 and 31%. And 21% is international, of people who are happy and want to go to their workplace.
Wow.
In North America alone, it's 31%. Wow. That means 1/3 of the doctors that you go to in a hospital are happy. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to see the other 2/3. Especially on surgery day. But that's a concern. So looking at it from the leadership lens, if you really want kids to be successful, you need your teachers to be successful. To Danny's point, fairly compensate them, pay them well, respect them and honor them and give them the freedom and autonomy to grow. But then really focus on asking them questions, what can we do to get better? And I have conversations with community members, community leaders, our local association leaders as well. And I'll give you an example. We just did our survey back in February. We've done it for the 4th year in a row. The average school district in America is at 60% belief of pride, culture, engagement, and want to be there. We just came in at 95%. And that was a heavy lift. We started at 77% 4 years ago, but a heavy lift because we had to look ourselves internally as leaders and saying, all right, this worked before, it's not going to work next year. We need to continue to advance. So constantly learning and constantly being excited about learning.
So Glenn, I want to go back because in your book, Calm in the Chaos, you're talking about, there's one chapter that talks about staying humble. You quote Marcus Aurelius, and he said Aurelius needed to remind himself to not let his titles or, read in like certifications, your academic standing, all that stuff. Don't let those go to your head. He reminded himself constantly that his job, the job he was privileged to have, was to use the short time he was given to fight for the common good. You must not let your accolades go to your head. You're here to serve, not collect fancy titles or trophies. You must always remain humble. And one of the things that you do in your book, guys, is, and as you know, is like quick test. When you introduce yourself to someone else in your school district, is it, hi, I'm Dr. Insert name here, and I'm the position, insert position here at this district? Or is it, hi, my name is this, right?
Yep.
First name here. Last time we checked, we were all human beings. Do we really need to remind everyone else of our titles? And then you always have these practice sessions as well, which I think is so important. So listeners, if you haven't picked this book up yet, that's one of the pieces of it. And you can see it's not long, but it's dense. It's like malt bread. It's like dense. And Danny, Glenn, in that conversation we just had, you talked a little bit too about how you show up every day. And you guys write about choosing your responses, and that space between stimulus and response is where leadership lives.
Mm-hmm.
Can you unpack that for us a little bit? And like, Danny, talk about ruckus makers and the space that they occupy too, in that stimulus and response.
Yeah. So you mentioned all the accolades and trophies and things like that. Yeah. I can tell you they're sitting in closets or on desks collecting dust. And I remember seeing a quote years ago about Vince Lombardi after he won his first Super Bowl championship. He celebrated that night, and then the next day he's back to work. And I guess that's like my mindset. But to me, it drives me insane. Like when people come up and say, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and this is where I'm from, and I've had all these accolades. I walk up and say, hey, my name's Glenn, and how can I help you? Because here we are. We are 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how many people are in that room when you meet, that you're there for the children. You're not there to boost how great you are. You're there for serving of your teachers as well. People forget that along the way. They're the ones to do the magic day in and day out. And how do you try to support them along that way? So, like I said, you have to check that ego at the door, and that's hard for some people to do. Me personally, I don't mind it. You mentioned my wardrobe. I wear a wacky suit or an outfit on all different holidays and stuff. For the intentionality of 2 things. Number 1, it makes fun of a suit. Number 2, it makes kids and parents and teachers laugh when they walk in the door, knowing that I'm creating a space where they can be happy and laugh. But at the same time, maybe they had a bad morning. Maybe they had the police at their house the night before. Maybe their parents are going through a divorce or whatever, but it makes them forget about life for a couple of minutes. I've done my job. And that's where, like I said, you're there to serve them. You're there to make them feel that they're in a good spot. They can talk to you and not be intimidated by your title.
What about you, Danny? That space between sort of leadership, stimulus, leadership lives between the space between stimulus and response.
I think the challenge is that the majority of leaders don't create the space, right? Mm-hmm. So there's really just stimulus and response. There's lacking the leadership in between in the space. And so, I talk about and think about and challenge leaders to consider how they could slow things down, right? So having a philosophy for life like Stoicism helps. That's why we included the case studies and sort of the practice, the different virtues. People know my work. I have a lot of reflection questions and tools, around that. And then there's, the value of like coaching and mentorship and masterminds. Like that's a very intentional space on the calendar to slow things down. And I even had a client just the other day, and she's like, I realize you barely even say anything on the coaching calls, and it's me just sort of like sorting things out. Yeah, sometimes you're just paying me to ask a few really good questions and shut up. Right? It's not my job necessarily to give the advice. That's the difference between coaching and consulting. But then that leader has the space and no rush to wrestle with the stuff. So I think, that's really a gift, right? And for whatever reason, I think there's a pressure from the system to just like keep going, take action, but like without even kind of unconscious action, right? Not really thinking with intentionality what you're trying to do and produce.
So earlier in this conversation, and I think this relates to what you're talking about there, Danny, as well. And Glenn, you said something about getting feedback from the people who are following you. I think people who are in leadership roles sometimes will fear that. I think it's a scary thing to ask for that feedback, and it's even harder sometimes to hear it. So again, I'm going to come back to the both of you. I'd like, Dan, you can jump in first. What's the silver bullet when it comes to asking for effective and honest feedback when you're in a leadership position? Because the power dynamic changes everything in schools, whether we want to admit it or not. But I think if you have a strategy, there's a better chance of getting that clear and consistent and accurate feedback. So Danny, you first, and then Glenn, I'm super curious about, is there a silver bullet to getting clear feedback when you're in a leadership or power position?
I'll try to tell a short story that provides the answer. So I'm sitting with Glenn in my office. I'm the principal. Glenn is my new assistant principal. And so I'm training and onboarding him, and we're going over our sort of mission and vision and core values. And, we've blocked like 3 hours. This is deep work, important work. And we're having a great conversation, really jamming, definitely in alignment. I'm thankful in this moment that I hired Glenn. I had some questions, but I'm thankful.
Yeah. We'll have questions afterwards.
Yeah, no doubt.
30 minutes into our conversation, there's a knock at the door, and it's Jason, and Jason's the custodian. And he says, Danny, Glenn, there's a problem. I don't know how to swim, which is weird to say to the principal and AP of a school because, we're just in a school building. I said, well, why are you telling us this, Jason? And you said, because the water main broke in the basement. And there's water coming in and it's going crazy and I don't know how to swim. And what are we going to do? And the world's about to end and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I say, Jason, remember rule number 6. And all of a sudden, all the frantic energy and the scowl and look of concern on your face, it just melts away. And then you leave the room as if nothing ever happened. So Glenn and I keep going, talking about mission, vision, core values. And, 30 minutes later, there's another knock at the door. This time, it's Garth interrupting us. And Garth said, he's a counselor, and Garth says, Danny, Glenn, school starts next week, and none of the kids have complete schedules, right? And this is a problem. Students need schedules before the start of the school year. But I also know that I've hired a bunch of smart people like Garth and Jason and Glenn, and that we can figure it out. Now, Garth, you look pretty stressed, right? The schedules are not complete. You're not sure where the answer's coming from and all that kind of stuff. But all I tell you is, Garth, remember rule number 6. And again, the concern, the worry, the anxiety sort of melts away, and you leave a changed man and let Glenn and I continue riffing. So we're talking mission, vision, core values, and Glenn finally, his curiosity's been piqued. He can't stand it anymore, and he says, Danny, he interrupts me this time. Danny, what the heck just happened? Jason came in talking about not being able to swim. Garth came in talking about the schedules. You've got to tell me what rule number 6 is. I said, all right, Glenn, I'll tell you what rule number 6 is. Rule number 6 is don't take yourself so seriously, right? And Glenn nods his head. That makes a lot of sense. And then he asks, well, what are rules 1 through 5? And I tell Glenn, there's no other rules. So I think when getting feedback, right, wear the suit like Glenn wears. And, when he's doing that too, he's taking his status as superintendent, right, and all the awards and all the titles, and he's making himself a human being, right, from demigod to just regular human being by doing things like that. And so I think by not taking yourself so seriously, humbling yourself, sharing the mistakes that you make, right? Telling people what you learn from the mistakes that you make. But all these kind of things brings your status down a bit intentionally, right? It makes you just a little more approachable, less of a robot to your people. And then you can ask for feedback. Last thing I'll say is this. The worst thing you could do is ask for feedback and do nothing, right? And so when you ask for feedback, then you need to clearly over-communicate how you are going to make changes, what's the plan. If you're getting feedback and you're not going to take action, why, right? Why are you deciding? Then And that way it shows people when you ask, you actually do something with it, and that builds trust, right? But in the opposite, if you ask for the feedback, do nothing, you're actually eroding trust on the culture. So I don't know. There's a few silver bullets for your chamber there.
Well, listen,
Beautiful.
Danny, I'm not a storytelling expert. I'm in no position to judge stories, but that was a 10. Okay. Unbelievable. I want to bounce over to Glenn. Glenn, what do you think?
I thought it was a 9.5.
Yeah, well,
Danny says it wonderful. And putting it in layman's terms, or the catchphrases that a lot of leaders hear is like the psychological safety. Do you have an environment where people feel comfortable, regardless of what their position is, to come and speak to you? Or are they hiding behind different doors and going to talk to different people? And, to your point earlier, Jason, when people give you feedback, not everybody wants to take it. And to Danny's point, when they don't take it, you're just, really putting yourself in a very bad leadership position. Because how many times have we been on a council or an interview committee and we all say, hey, we like this person. And then the head person comes up and says, no, I like this person instead, I'm hiring them. Like, you just destroyed an opportunity for connection there. So I think the biggest thing is that psychological safety, being able to talk to each other. To Danny's point, leveling the field that you're two human beings. And it's hard. You got to try to be compassionate and empathetic of where someone's coming from. I'm a big design thinking person, so I'm always trying to think like, what's the problem we have and how can we handle it? And how can we evolve? Instead of, well, no, this system's it and that's all, we're never going to change it. We've been successful. And to Danny's point, that's where some schools, they tried writing tradition for so long, or they get in the comfortable phase that they're afraid to make changes when they really need to. And people say, well, we've been telling you forever, you just didn't listen to us. And then eventually board meetings get longer, social media pages start getting, berating people and so forth. But when you start giving people respect in those conversations, and then they feel empowered to go do their job, they lead a lot further than you ever probably anticipated. So yeah, maybe I'll give you a 9.7, Danny. I'll be a little more.
Yeah. So I'm going to piggyback off of that, Jason, before we ask our final question, because the book ends with I think something that's so important for leaders to keep in mind, especially when you're talking about psychological safety, when you're talking about like making yourself human. It ends by, and I'm just going to read a little bit. You are stronger than you think you are. Think of all the hard things you've been through. They may have been unnecessary. They may have been unfair, but you survived. You are stronger now than you were then. Being a leader at a school is harder now than perhaps it's ever been. You get blamed or falsely accused. You get ignored or disregarded. You get bullied and manipulated. You have to make difficult decisions that the people you care about hate. You witness heartache and devastation and grief, and you're expected to make it better for everyone else, even when your own heart is breaking. You could leave any day, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with leaving. But if you don't stay, who will? And I just love that moment, because we've talked about this with other authors. We've talked about this in other seasons. Leadership can be quite lonely at the top. But what I appreciate about this book is you acknowledge it. And as you both have done through story and through bringing us to psychological safety, you're giving leaders the ability to shore up against, what this position really demands of people. And so I so appreciate that. And I think you've left us with a really good question here, Glenn, like a really important one when it comes to Jason's question about getting feedback. Have you created the environment where people feel they can give you that feedback? And I just think it's just a beautiful place to sort of take a pause in the podcast and ask our listeners who are leaders to think about what's the environment that you are creating. Are you wearing a suit because you want to be a suit? Or are you wearing a suit to kind of poke fun at being a suit? And I just love that as our analogy from the podcast. So thanks. Jason, do you want to send it to our last question?
Yeah, I mean, the namesake is Ted Lasso, and we talked a little bit about before coming on air, and we were asking all of our guests this season, do you think Ted was a good leader? And be honest, let's give him a little feedback this time, Glenn and Danny. is he a good leader? And what's your opinion on that? So, Glenn, you first this time. And let's, Danny, I'm super curious to hear your opinion on this.
I hope he is, because I've been called Ted Lasso many times. So, and it wasn't called wanker. Instead, I was called coach and good job.
Love it.
Honestly, I think he is. I really, I'm not going to lie. Ted Lasso kept me grounded during the COVID years. It was my Friday relief when I got done a long day of work and not knowing what was coming next in the world. And I could watch that. And I shared that with my staff, saying, hey, you guys need to watch the show. It's not just a soccer coach. It's a guy that's trying to bring so many different people together with various backgrounds. And, it also shows that he suffers internally. People forget that. Like leaders, we look like we're Teflon sometimes and we have a lot of great things, but I actually had a paraprofessional actually texted me yesterday after school and said, hey, are you okay? And I wrote back, thank you so much. You're the first person besides my wife or my administrative assistant to ever ask that question to me. I'm great. And I said, why do you think that? And she said, well, you just look a little preoccupied the last 2 or 3 days. You're not your normal Ted Lasso self. And I said, at the end of the year, I'm trying to get a bunch of things going on. But the fact that she reached out to me and did that made a difference. The other part I like about Ted Lasso is shows that leadership is not easy. You have people who may be working against you or with you. You have people that you're grooming to rise up as a mentor, and you hope they go on to bigger things, like the Nate issue, where Nate goes on and hates him. Nate forgets or doesn't realize all the things that Ted's going through a divorce, being a single dad all the way across the pond. He's trying to win soccer games. He's trying to figure himself out along the way. And he gave Nate as much as he could, but then Nate resents him. And finally, Nate has to come to his own realization and realize that too. And I've had a Nate. I've had a couple of Nates, in my lifetime. And we still talk years later. But for Ted, I love the way his positive optimism, trying to bring people together, because you have to be, your vision, your optimism, your energy has to be stronger than anybody else's negativity, or it brings down that team. And if you're calm, cool, and collected, being stoic along the way with that, people see that and it becomes highly contagious. So that's my thumbs up for Ted Lasso right there.
Nicely done, Glenn. What about you, Danny?
I think Ted was a good leader. You can tell that he cared about his people, and that matters a lot. If I had any criticism, it seemed that he finally eventually reached out to that sort of a psychologist therapist, role.
Yeah.
He probably needed to be doing that sooner, I would think. So don't wait too long for the support that is required. Yeah, that'd be my only critique. But the thing that Ted understood that many leaders miss is he knew, the number one job of a leader too. And if you remember the team's locker room, they had that sign that Nate ended up ripping, right? Ripping down in half, whatever. That was a metaphor type of thing. But if I remember correctly, the sign said believe, right? And that's the number one job of a leader, right? You think maybe that it's school safety, and it's not. You might think it's student achievement. It's not that either. These things matter, right? But what matters most, like Garth's showing us too, is you have to share the point of view and build the belief within your community of what's possible, right? And that takes a lot of hard work. It takes the slowing down and the reflecting and the pausing that we were talking about earlier in this episode. And it makes me a bit, frustrated at times, sad at times to say that most leaders don't get that. But the legendary ones, they do.
Yeah,
Ted Lasso, legendary.
Garth, I had those signs all over my school building. When
Yeah.
I sub for being a gym teacher here and there, I dress up as Ted Lasso. And then there are some days where, something's going on and I turn into Led Tasso.
Yeah.
My staff is like, you're Led Tasso. We know what we did wrong. It's all right. We'll figure this out. And we have but something cool about that. Every we do all these videos with the kids on our YouTube channel. And I always dress up as the Grinch every Christmas. We do a Grinch chase with the police, the fire, everybody in town. And then one time I ran and ripped up the believe sign. And every kid was angry at the Grinch who ripped up that believe sign. So I figured you appreciate that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You know, like listeners, I hope you can appreciate. We asked that question and two amazing but very different answers, right? In this book, you guys have amazing. You share so much in this book, right, about your own experiences, and that just brings it to life. That's why I just keep it by my desk and turn to it. Not every day, but often. So it's highly recommended. And that is a great way to end the show. So that's a wrap for this episode of Beard's Book Club with Calm in the Chaos. We have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. There's a lot of depth here, guys. Like there's a lot of things. You know, leaders must enter and create that space between stimulus and response. Like that's going to sit with me for a while. And then Glenn, you're the analogy of the suit, like why you wear it, how you wear it. And now I'm going to go check out your YouTube channel and see what the other things are that you're wearing. But thank you both for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Pick up this book, listeners, if you haven't already. It provides the calm in the chaos of leadership.
And Danny, I will not forget rule number 6, or that story that you shared with us. I appreciate that very much. And to everybody, thanks for listening. I hope you pick up this book, Calm in the Chaos. You are going to hear both Danny and Glenn's voices throughout that book. And I think it will support you during the difficult times that you might face in leadership and give you a bedrock as you move forward. So for our listeners, if you have a chance, give us feedback, ask questions, bring it. We'll be bringing those back in the third of these triad of episodes. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Glenn. Glenn, can you take us home?
Yeah, no problem. So until next time, keep leading the lasso way.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Danny. And always thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Grab your coffee, grab your seat. It's time to learn, it's time to meet. Garth and Jason setting the tone. Leadership lessons to take back home. Lassoing leadership sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's